Welcome to Representation Without Taxation with Jill McBride Baxter, a veteran sports law attorney for the past 30 years and certified NFLPA contract advisor.
I'm about three things: protection, advocacy, and trust.
Not only is Jill an attorney, she's the daughter of a college football coach and the wife of a college football coach, and she knows all of the issues from all angles. This is Representation Without Taxation, a one-of-a-kind show featuring critically relevant material for contract employees in sports.
This week on my podcast, I have Jesse Spector, and he is a writer for Deadspin. And we're going to talk about everything that's happened this week in sports. We're going to cover John Gruden. We're going to talk about Urban Meyer. We're going to talk about, I guess there's something going on with Brett Favre too that you've done some research on. I'm just going to end. So it's going to be a really interesting little discussion today. I have to tell you that about 2 or 3 weeks ago, Jesse called me and we were talking about a completely different issue. He wanted to know how contracts ended up in the news, NFL contracts. And I said, I have no idea. I'm an attorney. I wouldn't disclose that. And anyways, and that's a story he's going to write that will be upcoming for him. But we're going to talk more about everything going on. And I'm going to talk about it from my perspective as a female sports agent for 32 years. And he's going to talk about it from his perspective as a writer. So Jesse, introduce yourself to my listeners.
Yeah, I'm Jesse Spector. I'm a writer for Deadspin. The NFL has not really been my bailiwick over the years. I started the New York Daily News in 2003. Out of college, part-time. My job was answering the phone on the sports desk, taking high school football scores. And basically I hung around the office and just did little things that they needed me to do. And eventually got a full-time job on the sports copy desk, editing stories, writing headlines and captions. 2010, I became the New York Rangers writer, went from that to being the national hockey writer at Sporting News. They moved me over to baseball. There's a 3.5-year gap where I was freelancing after being laid off in 2016. But, freelancing and did a lot of stuff. While I was at Sporting News, the Super Bowl was in New York, where I'm from and where I live. So got to cross Super Bowl off the bucket list of things to do and to cover.
Yeah.
I got to see a snap go straight into the end zone on the first play of the game. So that was cool.
Oh, which game was that?
Broncos Seahawks.
Got it. Yeah.
So I do a little bit of football here and there. It's always been a sport that, watched every Sunday, but it's never been something that I've covered that deeply. And this job has given me a chance to touch on the NFL a little bit more. So came to you wondering about a story that I've been working on for a while. It's across all sports and how contracts become public knowledge. Some of it is good, some of it is a little weird, but we'll be getting to that. And in the meantime today, I had a chance to follow up on another thing that's been going on for a long time, which is Brett Favre owing the state of Mississippi. He now owes them $828,000.
So what did that have to do with? Just explain it. I did read the article before we got on here, but that's kind of been going on for quite a while. So now has it finally come to a head, or what's going on with that?
Somewhat. And Favre is not alone in this, and he is not criminally liable in any of this. I should definitely make that point. There was money that was meant for the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families program in Mississippi, federal money from the Department of Health and Human Services that went to TANF, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families in Mississippi. That money went to something called MCEC and FRC. And from there, there were other disbursements of it as well. It's $77 million of federal money that got misspent by this state department in Mississippi that they're on the hook for. Brett Favre's involvement, at least the main part of Brett Favre's involvement, because there's another angle of it that has to do with Southern Miss and their construction of a new volleyball facility where his daughter played volleyball. But that's separate from the money that he is now paying back or is required to pay back. So he got $1.1 million. The contract was for speaking engagements that he did not make, and also a radio public service announcement. Now, this struck me as weird that he said that, the speaking engagements were never part of it. So, okay, so it was 1.1 million for a PSA. And that struck me as weird. And yeah, I reached out to people in radio who said, yeah, somebody doing a PSA is usually something that you would do
for free. Yeah.
Or at least for expenses, certainly not for 7 figures. So that was always a little bit sketchy, but he announced last year that, well, this was money that shouldn't have come my way. It came from I'll gladly pay it back. And I'm going to pay back $500,000 and leave the rest of the $600,000, in payback in monthly installments was what he said he was going to do. So flash forward, that was last May. Flash forward to now, and this week, the state auditor of Mississippi came out with a letter saying, yeah, we're demanding payment back of all this money from people who shouldn't have gotten it. And that includes Brett Favre on the hook for $828,000. The reason that it's $828 and not the $600,000 that he hadn't repaid is because they're charging interest by law, 1% a month since July of 2018. So if he had paid the $600,000 back like he said he would, he probably wouldn't be involved in this. And you'd be talking about Marcus Dupree and the $1 Million Man from WWF days, who are also caught up in this. It's a whole mess that he's obviously, he's Brett Favre. So he's going to be the headliner of this. And also the fact that he said he was going to pay this money back. And, 15 months later, the state of Mississippi sending him a bill.
So you're saying he hasn't paid it back, or you don't know?
Well, the state of Mississippi says that he hasn't paid him back.
Oh, interesting. Very interesting. Wow. Yeah, that's just crazy. So now shift to, like I said 2 weeks ago, who would have thought that John Gruden would quit, or did he really quit, or was he forced to quit? And Urban Meyer would, after another loss, gets caught in a compromising situation. Who would have thought all those things would happen since I first met you?
Yeah. We maybe could have guessed that something disastrous would have happened with Urban Meyer, because that's a match made somewhere other than heaven to begin with. Him in the NFL. I'm not sure whoever thought that was going to work.
Well, the owner of the Jaguars thought it was going to work. Certainly. That's
yeah.
why right?
Yeah. Passed over everybody else to go get Urban. So nothing is working there. And I think that, he came in, he was going to have to display some credibility that, he wasn't just doing this as a stunt, and that he was into the pro game. And I think really hurt himself. The first thing he did was bring in Tim Tebow to play tight end.
Yeah, that was really odd to me. The other odd thing about this whole situation, because, I'm a coach's wife and a coach's kid, I've never been on a road trip with the team. Okay. When I've been on a road trip with the team, I've never not seen the head coach on the plane. At least in college, the head coach and his wife were on the plane, right? So we always had one trip, which we called the wives trip, meaning we got to go with the team. But I've never, ever, ever, ever not seen the head coach fly back, ever. Now, in the NFL, maybe it's different. But I don't know why. I mean, usually, this is my brain as an agent. Okay, after a game, there's usually some injuries. So the guys usually get on the plane, honestly, with the personnel department, and they're talking about who they might be bringing in for workouts. And they're going to discuss it with the head coach, depending on who got injured and who's available out there. And, what do you think? then usually they get off the plane, or even if they're on the plane, they might be calling me if I have a player at that position who maybe just got cut, or is a free agent that has, maybe he's been in 4 or 5 years. You know what I'm saying? That's usually when I get the call. Hey, we're working out tight ends. We're working out snappers. Is so-and-so available? Or a kicker had a bad day, So I think the part that I didn't understand was that I guess it was a bye week, right?
It was a Thursday night. It wasn't a bye, but it was a Thursday night game.
So it was a Thursday night game. I found it odd that he wouldn't go back with the team. That was the part I did not get. I do understand that I'm sure he has family, in Ohio, but they were playing the Bengals, correct?
Yes.
So how far away is that from, Columbus? See, I'm not.
Columbus, basically the middle of the state. Cincinnati's at the south end, Cleveland at the north end. Columbus is pretty much the midway point.
Right. So is it a 2-hour drive from there? I mean, I don't know if he was in Columbus or.
Yeah, probably. I've made that drive because I've had, just through my own travel experience, where I was on a trip to Cincinnati and flew out of Columbus, but I just drove straight to the airport. I didn't stop off.
Or maybe they were all in Cincinnati and then they just went out after the game. I don't know. Like, it's fancy.
Yeah, that not that's there.
The details I don't understand, because apparently he was in a restaurant bar that he owns. Somebody told me.
Yes, Urban Meyer's Chop House.
What?
Urban Meyer's Chop House.
Is that in Columbus?
It is in, I think, Dublin, Ohio.
Okay. Well, I don't know, so anyways, I don't know how far away that was from the game, is what I'm trying to say. So I find it all just kind of odd. I think it was odd that he didn't return with the team.
Absolutely. Like, you could see it, like, if they're in Ohio, it's a Thursday game. Maybe there's like a family emergency, but there's not I'm going to hang back here and check on things at the restaurant. Not when you're a coach in the NFL. That's from what I've always been led to believe about how coaches in the NFL operate. September to hopefully beginning of February, you are not seen nor heard by anybody in your family or anybody outside of the football organization.
Oh, and they're very myopic usually. Like, they just football.
Mm-hmm.
And particularly if you're not winning, I mean, that's even worse.
Yeah.
So the stress level is much higher, and there's a lot more concerns that need to be dealt with, particularly, what happened during the game. How are the players? How is everybody? So I just found the whole thing strange because of that. It's going to be interesting to see if this is overlooked. And it seems to me like, okay, we haven't heard anything about it. What do you think is going to happen?
I can't see him lasting that long in Jacksonville. It just, based on it, the results aren't there, for one thing. Like, they're 0-5. They're going to they're going to London. Is that where their game is?
They might be playing in London. Yeah.
I know it's away. It's an international game. I just wasn't sure if it was in London or somewhere else, but his problem here, no matter how good his football acumen is and whether or not his coaching can work at the NFL level on an X's and O's basis, is one matter. I don't know how you ever get a team back after this when they're pretty clearly seeing that this guy is not up to the caliber that they expect of an NFL coach. And yeah, it's a young team. There's a lot of guys who don't have a lot of experience, but like you said, nobody at any level of football ever sees the coach not travel back from a road game with the team unless it is dire circumstances, like somebody's dying.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's the only. And I was even thinking, okay, in college, like, sometimes there's some assistants that maybe need to go on the road recruiting if there's a bye, right? So they might, like, let's say they play somewhere and the top recruit in the country's there. I could see that, but the head coaches aren't doing that. That's the assistants. right? Because I was trying to think, what circumstance would that happen? I think you're right. Somebody's really sick and you happen to be in the city and it's your parent or something, or
Yeah.
your, or in college it's recruiting. But that would be an assistant coach having to go on the road, not the head.
And that's team business. Like
Yeah,
that's still
exactly. Yeah, it's team business. So now fast forward, and this is interesting because I get this one question all the time, is what's going on with what happened at the Raiders. Okay.
Mhm.
And I get the number one question I get is, how are you treated as a female? And I thought to myself, well, I've always been treated very well, actually. And so I get, like, for instance, Bruce Allen, when he was at the Redskins, his dad was a coach too, and his dad coached at Long Beach State,
Mhm.
and he lived in Palos Verdes when he was a kid. And when our kids also went to Palos Verdes High School because my husband was coaching at USC. And Bruce actually wrote me this long personal note about, oh, I went to Palos Verdes High School, always super nice to me, right?
Mhm.
And then I thought to myself, well, and why was that? And I'm thinking, but I didn't work for them. I worked with them if I had something that they needed. Okay. If I didn't have something they needed, they probably maybe wouldn't call me back, but I don't think they would call back any agent if they don't need what I have, right? They're too busy. So
Yeah.
I always sit there and think, how was I treated as a female? I was always treated really well by all the coaches. And Rich Bisaccia, who just got the head job at the Raiders, I've known for a long, long time because I've represented a lot of specialists, and Rich has been a lot of different places. And he actually coached, I think it was Robert Maloney coached at Tampa Bay. He might have even had Robert at another place, maybe Travis, I don't know. But anyway, so he's always been great to me, and now he's the head coach, and he's always wanted to be a head coach. And a lot of times they don't promote special teams coaches. So honestly, I was very excited that Rich was the one who was getting the opportunity, because they coach the whole team when they're in special teams.
Mhm.
And so they're the one coach on the staff that does have connections with the offense and the defense and then the specialists, right? Whereas if you hire the quarterback coach, he's got 3 quarterbacks in the room. I mean, it's never made a lot of sense to me, honestly, who they often pick for head coaches. So I was kind of happy that Mark, picked Rich to replace John. Now, he was the assistant head coach, and he was with John Gruden at Tampa. Okay. So then I'm thinking to myself, okay, I know they've always been great to me, treated me great, all of them. And I've really not had a bad experience, but I guess I don't know what they're emailing to each other. Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. And, you think about the Raiders history too. And I know that, Mark Davis is different than Al Davis for sure. But this is still the organization that hired Tom Flores, that hired Art Shell, that's been
Yeah.
at the forefront of, I don't care who you are, can you make this football team better? That's what they say, commitment to excellence. That's what it has historically been about.
Right.
And now you come to this and read that Mark Davis is frustrated by this and felt like he had to had no choice but to let Gruden go. And maybe that's, you don't like having your season interrupted and wish this could have come at a different time. Maybe it's, why is this happening to us when this was really supposed to be an investigation about the Washington football team, and John Gruden's emails are getting leaked, maybe because they are insulting to Roger Goodell above.
And DeMorris. DeMorris is another friend of mine who is like my favorite person on the face of the earth. Love this guy. And I was like, and you know what I like about DeMorris? He will confront people on their bad behavior, and he does not back down. And he's a lawyer, super smart guy, by the way. He's done some amazing things with the union. People do not appreciate him enough, in my opinion. And so I'm glad DeMorris said something. He's not the kind of guy that's going to back down and allow somebody to talk in that way and get away with it if he knows about it, right? He's not that kind of person. So I actually, and you know, it's an interesting struggle. Yeah. So he said things about Roger. He said things about DeMorris. I don't know what kind of things he said about women. Oh, he didn't like the women refs. I'm like, what? Are you kidding? I mean, who? It's like, you think only a man can do this job? I mean, it's just so funny to me. Like,
Yeah.
it's very very narrow minded. But you know what exists now that didn't exist like when, like, you know, Bruce Allen's dad was coaching, is there wasn't a lot of email, and those guys didn't email, and there wasn't social media.
Mm-hmm.
And then once the two white guys get together, who knows what they're going to say? And would they say the same thing if a woman was present, if a black man was present, if a black woman was present, if, you know, would they say the same thing? I don't think so. Or maybe they would, actually. I've had other people, not coaches, say stuff, and I just look at them like, are you kidding me? You're saying that in front of me? But I confront them, right? So maybe they all know, don't say anything to Jill. She's going to say something.
I mean, it's something that just, and this is a very, very minor example of it. John Tortorella coached the Rangers when I was covering them. And for the most part, it was the other, I'm a white guy. The other beat writers were white guys. So most of the time it would be a bunch of white guys in a room for a press conference.
Okay, well, let's talk about that.
Every now and then, Katie Strank, who's done phenomenal work now for The Athletic, she's, you know, been busting open all of these harassment stories for the past year and a half on USA Gymnastics and Michigan State and everything else. She was doing Hockey for Newsday at the time. And every now and then she would get assigned. She mostly did the Islanders, but, you know, she was the Islanders writer, but every now and then she'd, you know, pop up at a Rangers game. And Tortorella is a potty mouth. No problem. People curse. It's
believe me, I do
especially
too.
hockey.
I'm a coach's kid. I'm sorry. My husband says, Jill, we have children. Well, they're 24 now, but you know what?
So most of the time, you know, John would have no problem cursing one of us out in a press conference or just dropping a stray F-bomb. But when Katie would show up, he would always just, oh, there's a lady present. And even said that out loud once, you know, apologized for using a 4-letter word in her presence. And I think that, you know, that's just that little sliver of insight into, oh, it is different when it's not just white boys in the room.
Well, do you find that, I mean, is that really how all boys talk? I don't think so, Jesse.
No.
I mean, I was like, my dad would have never, ever, ever, ever said anything like that.
No, but in some cases, there is this little mental guy that says, oh, I'm supposed to act I'm supposed to act different around women, or I have to watch myself. It's that same idea of, like, you know, the men who can't trust themselves to have a one-on-one meeting with a woman. Well, why is that? And
maybe you should worry about yourself.
Are you that unable to conduct yourself professionally that you think that it's always going to result in some kind of sexual harassment or conflict situation? Why do you need that kind of governor to stop you from whatever misbehavior you feel is inherent once you're not in your comfort zone with just other white guys?
Yeah, I have no idea, because I don't know. I have no idea. First of all, I have to say, I've never really been in that situation, but I've been self-employed and worked for myself for my whole entire career, right? Mm-hmm. So, and the one woman who does lots of work for me is Grace, right? So I don't even have any and she's in Miami and I'm in California, so we're not even in the same place.
Mhm.
And then the other opportunities where I'm really interacting a lot is like the AFCA convention, where there's all coaches, and the combine. And really, I've never had, I don't know, never had a bad experience. And we're all running around and talking, and usually we're having a drink somewhere and having dinner, but we're talking about football. We're talking about players. You think this guy is going to fit you need this guy, or they'll come up to me, hey Joe, what do you think about this guy? Even a guy that I don't represent. And I'll say, well, I watched every snap, and this is the problems that he has. And then this is like when they're talking about first round picks, particularly quarterbacks, because we were at USC. So, every quarterback that was in one draft, I had seen a lot, like maybe 3 or 4 years. And I knew them on a social basis because they were my daughter's ages. Right. So I was like, well, there's this, and this, there's this, and this. So you decide, but I wouldn't pick them that high because of this, and this. And usually it was because I knew about their bad behavior. You see what I mean? Or if they were great guys, but, threw a lot of picks, but go ahead. You know what I mean? It's like, great guy.
I don't think it's everybody in the industry, but I think that there's.
No, it's not. I mean, I'm married to a coach. My dad's a coach, but I will say this, that I'm super, and we have 2 daughters, right? And one of them has worked in football, and the other is actually in real estate. And we talk about all kinds of things, but we always have, right? Things that happen, and in every industry, there's just people that are not appropriate. And I will say that my daughter at one place, one of the guys at that university that was like, I don't know, whatever, he was really, really was mean to her because she was a female. And he was like, what do you know about football? She goes, why don't you sit down with me and I'll watch film with you and I'll tell you. And let me see how you're organizing it. Because this is how my dad does it. And this is how I learned. And she just like, but she felt, she was really, I remember her calling us and she was really upset. And I was just like, yeah, there's some assholes out there, Kelly. I don't know what to tell you. But maybe you should confront him. But it's hard when you're like a student worker, you know what I mean? And you're going to confront somebody who's your peer, or not your peer, but your boss, right?
Yeah, that's how those power structures are set up.
So in my situation, see, I didn't work in an office with them. I was merely, I had something they wanted, a player, right?
Yeah.
So you see how that's different. The power structure is different, I'm saying.
Yeah.
And they don't know who I'm going to have next year, right?
It's very different from a ref who you can just complain about consequence free.
Exactly. That is my point. So I think my situation is different. I think if I were to talk to like my friend Laura Oakman or Liz Habib, who both have been longtime sports, sports on air women, I bet they would have more insight about this than or had different experiences than I did.
I would think so. And I don't think there's a woman I know in my industry who doesn't have one or multiple stories of men, whether players or people that they're, executives, being inappropriate in one way or another. Because for a lot of them, for a lot of men who are in sports, they don't recognize that women can just like sports. It's seriously a mindset of, oh, there's a woman here, she must be trying to get in my pants. So much of the time, for so many people for so many men in sports, that is what their mindset is. And it's
so bizarre to me, because like that wouldn't even cross my friggin' mind. Like, are you kidding? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, wouldn't even cross my mind. It's like, but I grew up in football. I mean, my dad's a coach. I mean, we were literally, I wrote a book called Born to be a Sports Agent because I was really born on a football field. So, and I'm not joking. My parents were in college, and I'm certainly certain that the first thing my mom did was take us to practice, and we were living in student housing, right? So we were always running around on the college campus with all the other players and their kids, because back then they all had kids in college. They were married and going to college, and they all had kids, and they all just kind of hung around together. It was a different time, I would say. So, but we had quite a lot of fun, actually. We just ran around all the time, and there was always fun playing sports all day with all the other coaches, all the other player kids. And then
I'll bet you that those guys didn't wind up being like the guys that we're talking about, because they grew up with.
It would be interesting to know, because like, okay, there's a lot of coaches' kids out there. Okay, Bill Belichick was a coach's kid and a special teams guy. John Harbaugh is a coach's kid and a special teams guy. Okay. I don't know if John Gruden was a coach's kid. I don't know if his dad was a coach.
I don't know.
Bruce Allen, certainly his dad was a coach. So I don't know.
Yeah.
So as a writer, what is it like for you? Okay, the story breaks about John Gruden. What is the first thing you do, and how hard is it to get people to answer the phone and answer questions?
That's one where, like, this story broke, and for me, it's like, I'm gonna let I know I'm not going to be the person who's necessarily on this one, because I don't have contacts in the NFL who are going to, be open, talk quickly about something that is sensitive and damaging to somebody who's been very prominent in the field. And that's where it's tricky. If you get assigned a story like that, you have to know, okay, who can I call? Who can I get on the phone? Who can I email? And you might get nothing, in which case
I could see, because
in which case you just got to kind of, if you're not the one who's breaking the story, sometimes all you can do is try to write and react and put it in context as best you can with what you know. Different stories in that way are definitely very different. And it's, one of the things that, for me, I've had some stories where, I've done stuff with sources who are anonymous or off the record. That's not generally how I prefer to work. Okay,
interesting.
But I think that that's a thing that people don't necessarily realize, is that there are so many different roles in sports writing. And not everybody is good at the same aspects of the job. You can be somebody who goes to the games and writes a hell of a story about, like, really painting the picture of what happened in that game. Somebody who's really good at breaking down X's and O's. Somebody who's really good at going out and getting those people to talk. Maybe on the record, maybe just not for attribution. Ideally, the very best at it can combine all of the different skills. And I think that's what a lot of people strive for. But, I think I learned to be, in that position of, like, I don't want to say Adam Schefter today because of the revelation that, he was sending Bruce Allen an email of his unpublished drafts saying, hey, what kind of tweaks should I be making here? That's not something that we ought to be doing ever. You can go
Oh.
back to a source and look for clarity, and say like, hey, I'm planning to say X, Y, and Z. Does that jive with what we talked about? Are you comfortable with that? For me to print that. But to send somebody a whole story and say like, hey, take a look at this. No, that's no good.
Okay, that's an interesting question, because some people do want to look over something completely. They'll say, I'll give you the story, but I need to read everything before it goes to print. You think that's uncommon? I think that's common.
I think that maybe it's more common than I realize, apparently.
Well, as an attorney, I just know, like, if I have a client that is gonna talk to the media for some reason, like I've had a UFC fighter for like 8 years, and stuff used to happen a lot in with that situation. And I always wanted him to look at everything, because he liked to do all interviews auditorially. He did not want to write anything. He wanted to do one-on-one talking to him on the phone. But sometimes things get misinterpreted, or that's not really what I said. You know what I mean? Maybe
Right.
that's how you interpreted it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think there's, if you have that conversation and a back and forth, and especially if you've agreed in advance that like, all right, I'm going to write this up, and I'll run it by you just to say like, look, this is what I'm saying. I want to make sure that I am fairly representing what you're saying, but you don't give a source final say before you file.
Okay, interesting. I did not know that. What if that's what they agreed to, though?
I think that's a very sticky area.
This is interesting. Well, so what's
because where then is the line between journalism and public relations?
Well, here's the deal. If he wants to get more stories from Bruce, then he's going to have to be good at the relationship.
Right.
Too. That you have to do both.
Yes.
I mean, maybe as an agent, it's the relationship with the teams, because I got to be able to go back to the scout that, and if I say something, I've got to keep my word. Like if I said he's coming for the workout, he's coming for the workout, right? Because, let's say this is what happens on our end. You get a call. And it happened a lot with kickers, right? Because there's always a lot of kickers available on the street because there's only one on the team. So kicker has a bad day at 3 different teams. So team 1 calls first and you say yes. Then team 2, 3, and 4 calls and you're like, ooh, you know what? I think that guy's a lot more hurt than this guy. You see?
Yeah.
But if I've already made the promise, he's going to come there. And then I'll just try to say, hey, well, can he come the next day if he doesn't get signed? Right? That's kind of how it works.
Well, if I'm doing a story and I say, and I call you and I say, all right, you rep John Smith, kicker. Okay. And you tell me, all right, well, John is going to Cleveland this week. That's where we're hoping, there's a bunch of teams with openings and, but it looks like Cleveland is where he's going to go. And before, I do some other reporting and find out, who else Cleveland has been looking at, what the other teams are, who's hoping to get him. Before I publish, I could certainly circle back to you and say, all right, I'm about to publish this. It says John Smith is going to Cleveland and had offers from Arizona and San Francisco as well, but he's chosen Cleveland.
Right.
And I go to you and I say, is that accurate?
Gotcha.
And but I wouldn't send you the whole story.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. And actually, if somebody calls me, I guess they didn't send me the whole story. But if you're Bruce Allen and it's about this whole environment of, I don't know what the story that you're talking about with Adam. It's the first I've heard of it, but
it was there's an LA Times report based on, further further on these emails.
Before he was fired, or after?
Before.
Yeah, he hadn't been fired yet.
Right. So yeah, Gruden was still with ESPN.
I know, but I'm talking.
Right. No, Schefter was obviously still at ESPN because he still works there now.
But I'm saying Bruce Allen,
yes,
was the GM at the time.
Right. This was a story about labor negotiations.
Oh, why? So just so you know, during the labor negotiations, this was in 2011, it was very heated what was going on, because, it was just a really tense time. And, coaches never like it when the players get more power, honestly, especially if they can't come to practice, because coaches like to coach. Now, the weird thing about it is John Gruden was in the media. So, he probably felt more free to have an opinion.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
I think so.
Yeah.
For sure. And I think that to him, those emails were just, part of a relationship that he already had.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure he's been friends with Bruce for a long time.
Yeah.
Because Bruce was, he was one of the longer standing GMs, honestly. I mean, he really was. He was there a long, long time. But the interesting thing is, how do emails get leaked? I mean, if there's an investigation, see, I don't get this. Like, if there's an investigation and I'm the attorney doing the investigation, I'm not leaking emails to anybody. That's like completely unethical.
Yeah.
So how does this happen?
So in this case, where the LA Times got their story was from court filings, that these emails were part of court records. Now, where
public documents, yeah.
Where did the Wall Street Journal and New York Times get their leaks from? They did not specify that they were from court documents in Arizona. So that does, that's something that you have to wonder. And that's why I think kind of a conventional wisdom that's developed over the last couple of days is that it would be the league itself, in part, to deflect away from the rest of this investigation into the Washington organization and Dan Snyder. If we can make this about John Gruden in the news story, maybe people don't pay so much attention to Dan Snyder. Maybe people don't pay so much attention to this team that has had so many legal issues, from the name of their team to the cheerleading squad to anything else. And, just the entire, why this investigation was happening in the first place. And I think that's why the NFLPA is saying, all right, well, if these are the emails that are getting leaked, what's in the emails that you guys don't want us to see? Let's get that all released, please.
Well, what's going to be interesting is if they do get them all released, I bet there's some other people in the NFL that probably don't want.
I bet there are. There's 650,000 emails. I'm guessing that John Gruden's were not the only ones that were less than flattering for the NFL.
Yeah, especially during the labor stuff, because it was very tense. Believe me.
Right, and that's why he's calling out Damaris that way, because it was about
which is not. But just say, gosh, I really don't like it that the NFL and the union aren't agreeing. You don't have to be mean. You don't have to be mean. It's okay to have a different opinion, but it's okay to be mad, but it's not okay to be mean. That's what my mom always said.
It's fair.
Right? It's like, that's just not, don't ever, oh boy. It's just an interesting time. You never know what's going to happen in sports.
Poor Jeff Fisher has to come out and be like, the NFL didn't pressure us to draft Michael Sam. We just thought he was a good player. He was the SEC Defensive Player of the Year. We thought we should draft this guy.
And exactly. And you know what? And I really do think that most coaches, I mean, now they want the best players. Now the Tim Tebow thing at Jacksonville, I would agree that was weird.
Yeah.
The tight end thing. I mean, it's like, why would you think that he would be able to play tight end? Like, I don't know. He's been out for quite a while.
Yeah, he's just been playing baseball for the past few years. Hasn't played tight end ever.
Yeah, that didn't make any sense to me. But I don't know. Because usually coaches, they want the best players, trust me. Because they want to win. There's so much pressure to win that
I guess Urban liked having a guy that he was familiar with and thought highly of. Or you know what? I can't even try to get into the mind of Urban Meyer at the NFL level of what, because there's nothing that's gone right there that you would think that, like, oh yes, this is a well thought out plan.
Well, I think the thing is, the difference between the NFL and college is the power structure, right? Because you have the owner really who has the most power, and then you have the players. All right. I think the players would be second there. And then you've got, GM and that group, and then you've got coaches, and then you've got scouts. And I've always thought the scouts should be treated much better, honestly, because that is the hardest job. They're on the road 100 days of the year away from their families, going from school to school to school, watching film. I mean, it's a hard job. And I always thought I always feel like they're undervalued, but it's a very difficult job. It's probably like being, the sports writer, the beat writer, going from game to game to game, right?
Yeah. I mean, although at least as a beat writer, you've got the team schedule months in advance, so you can plan out all that travel. If you're a scout and they want you to go take a look at some quarterback in Indiana on Tuesday, you've got to find out a way to get to Indiana by Tuesday.
Well, yeah, they're just on the road. I mean, they go to all the college practices, and then they're at the games, and they'll pick a school. Like, okay, let's say, USC is playing Utah, so I'm going to go to the practice during the week at USC, and then go to the game, and write my evaluations, and then I'll go, to whatever, go to UCLA next week. They're home. They'll kind of schedule it out that way, but it's just, I mean, anyways, but I feel like the power structure is so different in the NFL than college, that the part when you're a head coach in college, you just don't get to make all the rules.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I think I don't think Steve Spurrier was a bad, like a guy whose offense didn't work, and like so many of the things that he did at Florida worked, at the pro level. But when it came to coaching that team in Washington, that was just it just wasn't going to work. And there's
Nick Saban too. Nick Saban was at Miami. It didn't work.
It worked a little better.
Yeah.
For him. Like at least Saban had competitive teams there. Like it was not embarrassing the same way, but also Saban had worked in the NFL.
Yes, he did. He
on Belichick's staff in Cleveland.
Yeah, in Cleveland. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. So he had some, but I do think the players now are different. But I don't know how much different, but they have access to social media. They're a lot, more understanding of, like, I'm just not gonna play to the death here. Okay, I am gonna take care of my body, because it's the only thing that is going to get me out of the league. It's health and safety, really. The only reason why players usually don't last is because of injuries. Like, why aren't there more running backs that play for 10 years? Guess why? Because they get hit on every play that they're running, right? It's a really hard position to play.
They got a block on the plays where they're not running.
What?
And they got a block on the plays where they're not running the ball.
That's right. So it's a really hard position to last a long time. I feel like in like the NFL, if you're really the number one back and playing every single, down of the game, it's a very tough position. So I don't know. Is there anything else we need to talk about?
Has anything happened in the past hour?
No, I haven't checked my phone.
I haven't looked.
It's been
quite a week.
It has been quite a week. When I'm actually proud of the NFL for saying, you know what? Sorry, we aren't okay with this. We
Yeah.
aren't okay with you talking this way. We're not okay with you talking about DeMorris this way, or Roger Goodell this way, or women this way. This is not okay. And we're not going to allow it. And I thought, wow, maybe we are making progress.
Maybe. I hope so.
I hope so too. Yeah, why is this still happening? But I don't, it's like, why are we still having these conversations? I thought Martin Luther King and what he stood for was, oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, I thank you so much for being on my show. And
Thank you for having me.
how does somebody get a hold of you if they just want to, like, I don't know, maybe they got a story to tell you. I don't know.
Well,
What about somebody who just wants to be a writer? So many people call me, I want to be an agent. Oh boy, it's not that easy.
I'm on Twitter. It's just my name, and my DMs are always open. So
Okay, great.
that's probably the easiest way to reach me, because the email box gets real.
At Jesse, Jesse Spector, Spector, right? And you
That's
write
right.
for Deadspin.
Yes.
Great.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Representation Without Taxation. Simply stated, I am always and forever about three things: protection, advocacy, and trust. To learn more about my fair fee structure, please visit my website at jillmcbridebaxter.com. If what we are talking about strikes a nerve, please subscribe and definitely share it. Until next time, it doesn't matter what the plan is, as long as you have one.